Welcome to the OIC, otherwise known as the Omnipresent Information Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Peterson.
And I'm the co-host, Noah Hansen. The Omnipresent Information Connection Podcast is all about your world and your unique walk on this path called life. We present fascinating, life-changing information from around the world that has been validated. We also authenticate the information by providing you with links to where you can find out more about what we are talking about on our show. This podcast includes historically accurate, genuine facts that have helped shape our daily lives into what they are today. In today's episode, we're just going to do a short 15-minute episode on the topic of mental protection. In these times of mass chaos, when it seems like a lot of people are really not having a lot of barriers between them and mass panic, when people are being influenced by the mass media in ways that cause them to be fearful and lock themselves in their homes, when people are sometimes, in some cases, have phobias of even going outside, mental protection is a very deep subject and very, very relevant to all of us in our lives. The more mental protection you have, the more you are capable of protecting your own mind and your own energies, the better off in this world you're going to be, especially in such a chaotic world as what we live in right now.
Absolutely.
So mental protection is something that, I have been developing over the past 3-4 years in large amounts, but before then in high school and, as a child, you really are learning from the world around you, and it's the world around you, your environment, that is causing the amounts or the amount of training, I guess you could say, in mental protection that you have. You don't really understand mental protection, how important it is, until you really get out into the world and really understand what's really out there. You become an adult and you gain that mental protection in a big way, but some adults are much less capable than some of these children who have gone through a traumatic experience.
Yeah, because it's false emotions and false impulses appearing real.
That's right. So, that's fear. Fear is the cause of any amount of breaching of your mental protection. If something breaches your mental protection, you will only be influenced negatively, because the mental protection that you have, it doesn't need to protect you from positive things, from positive feelings and emotions.
Right. Because it's a natural part of your being once you tune into that frequency.
And that's what science is saying, is that our natural sort of the healthiest response that our bodies have is to positive emotions. Mm-hmm. If it were not natural for us to do so, our bodies would not react in that way, to positivity. So when we talk about mental protection and how we each are at sort of a different level of it, a different amount of training at it, mm-hmm. What do we need to know, first and foremost, about building our own mental protection?
You need to have a good deciphering system when it comes to information.
Discernment. That's important, and I agree with you there, because there can be things that look and feel positive, but honestly are not. And having that discernment allows you to distinguish between one or the other and know whether to protect yourself from one thing or another. Because I'm sure for all the drug addicts and alcoholics out there, that alcohol and those drugs look pretty good. Mm-hmm. And it might be a positive thing for them if they haven't had that conviction to get well yet.
Right.
And that's how addictions happen.
Absolutely. So we're just starting with the first one, right? So the second thing that you can be able to do is ask questions. Ask people that you value, that actually are setting the example that you're wanting to set for yourself.
Mentors are important, for sure. I know you played a critical role in me building my own mental protections in the past few years that I've known you.
Absolutely, because how that was able to happen is by having real conversations. So have real conversations. Maintaining a support system of people who provide positivity can be vital in keeping a happy, healthy mind. This might also mean cutting out unhealthy or toxic relationships instead of withdrawing from others. Be deliberate about staying in communication with positive people in your life. Isolation can be unhealthy, but connecting with others deeply and honestly can boost your overall well-being. So the next thing you can be able to do is snap back in the moment. So anytime that you have negative thoughts or feelings or emotions that aren't feeding you in the manner that you need to be fed, snap back from them. Regroup. Take a breath. Refocus your time well spent on you.
I really like what you said about stepping back and taking a breath, because I think those are two very important things that we can do when facing a choice or a future decision that we're going to make. If, a lot of times we inherently know, we have conviction, or we have an understanding that something we're about ready to do isn't going to have the best outcome possible, but it's something that we're willing to take because we just want, whatever it is in that moment that we're putting ourselves in front of. One good example, cigarette smokers. Mm-hmm. A lot of people who are smoking cigarettes, they want to quit, but they just choose to light up that next cigarette because it's just one. And who knows if they're going to have another one after that. But for this time being, I'm going to have the cigarettes on me while I'm trying to quit, but I'm going to still light them up whenever I want. Now, having that conviction is really, really important. That's one of the major steps, is just wanting to get better, knowing that there's an issue that you want to get out of your system. So taking a breath is what I want to point out in that situation and scenario, because oftentimes cigarette smokers aren't really just addicted to cigarettes. They're addicted to taking deep breaths of that cigarette smoke. So taking a breath, taking just one deep breath when you have that feeling that I want to smoke a cigarette can be powerful. Can be powerful in not only having some will, some free will over what choice you're about to make, and not just being pulled into it by this feeling, but having the time, the breath to think about it and to really try to, get yourself out of that want or that desire to smoke that cigarette. Taking a deep breath will give you a sort of relief, at least a little bit of it, because that's what the body is craving, is that deep breath, that deep inhale that you take with the cigarettes. If you disassociate that deep breath with the cigarettes, it's going to be just another level of not needing it. Mm-hmm. Because that takes away from the body's desire for that deep breath, because you've already satisfied that desire. The rest of the desire that's there is for the chemicals and the tobacco that are in the cigarette.
Absolutely.
So, that could be, who knows how much of a statistic it is that the body craves a deep breath over the cigarette and the chemicals in the tobacco. Who knows what that statistic is, but I believe it is a portion of it is needing that deep breath, that time to just relax. And you shouldn't have to, and every cigarette smoker knows this, you shouldn't have to step outside and smoke a cigarette in order to have that time to yourself, in order to have that deep breath of consideration and thought. The cigarette doesn't need to be present. What if you stepped outside and took a deep breath instead of taking some drags out of a cigarette? I mean,
in today's society, we that are smokers have to go outside anyway.
Right.
So why don't you just go into that environment without the cigarette and take some deep breaths and then say some mentally empowering words to go along with that.
Right, add on to it.
Mm-hmm.
Make yourself addicted to the positive things that are enhancing your life instead of letting the negative addictions that you're already convicted for, that you already want to rid yourself of and that you feel guilty after doing.
Mm-hmm.
Replace those with positive things. Get addicted to some positive things.
Yeah, because it's hard to be able to smoke with an open mouth.
Well, you're saying say it out loud so your ears can hear it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes.
Absolutely.
And it registers different when you do that. When you read a book, all people who've read books out loud know it's a different feel.
Mm-hmm. Because when you're talking out loud, then you cannot smoke and talk at the same time. You have to take a pause.
That's right.
And so that if you take that pause and just keep feeding yourself seeds of greatness, eventually you and your entity will want to be able to embrace that more than embracing the cigarette.
I hear that. All right, so what's a third step in mental protection? Because we have two already.
Third is exercise. You got to be able to exercise your brain by being able to read Reader's Digest, to be able to read a scientific book, to be able to read something that would be able to fill your brain with more than just the negative thoughts, negative feelings, negative emotions that the news, the media, people in your current circle may be giving to you.
Right. Right.
So you got to exercise a new way of being able to think, to be able to learn, and to be able to do.
So one thing I see in this world is the news and the media. It's entertainment. There's a lot that has to do with entertainment. They want to entertain the viewers to get views, right? So it's all very fast paced, and there's a lot of negativity because negative media sells, and this is very well known. That's why you'll see inherently more negative stories than there are positive stories on the mass media. Mm-hmm. Now, there are media centers that focus strictly on the positives. Mm-hmm. There are media centers like us that focus on information that's life-enhancing, and that's why I love what we do here, Kevin. But for the most part, the mass media likes to focus on world disasters and stuff, and it's good to be informed about that, but how much information you're taking in, there's I think there's a fine line.
Yes.
So when the mass media is talking about, a virus that's spreading and talking about all these horror stories over in another country, what about all the horror stories about all the diseases in this country?
Correct.
Things that people are going to be able to be proactive about, and, whether it's donating money to this cause or sharing information that can help people prevent diseases that are going on. Why do we have to hear about the horror stories in other places and just have nothing but fear to respond with?
Right, because what you feed yourself, you become.
Right, and a lot of people think that, what you just said, learning about the science and learning about all these intellectual things that you're talking about, a lot of people associate that with boredom, and I think that's in large part because of the educational systems. You don't want to go to a class at 8 a.m. in the morning, at least I didn't, and learn about politics. However, I think that the things that we aren't really put in front of, that we aren't forced to go to in order to reach our goals, things that are just for a hobby or entertainment, you can really discover some amazing things out there. It is very stimulating to my mind to learn about things like quantum physics, to learn about things like archaeological discoveries and anthropological news that are coming out. Mm-hmm. It's super stimulating to my mind, and even great mysteries that I may never get an answer to, just pondering them is very fun for me. Now, I do a lot of research online, and I have got networks like Gaia, and I've got HeartMath Institute, and I've got even just the YouTube resource, the widespread YouTube resource. There's all kinds of awesome information out there that I think would really, if people were to know about this, have a different perspective on learning about what's really out there in the world, because I think a lot of people honestly think that we've reached a point of discovery where we're not really discovering that much more, where it's sort of reached a null zone. But if you really look into it, if you just delve a little deeper into what's going on in the science communities and what's going on in the things that they're not talking about on the mainstream media, then you'll discover there is a whole lot that we're discovering that really could change the makeup of how we do things, whether it's economics or at-home living.
Mm-hmm. And to be able to bring this all home, that's why we created our website, inanewway.com, where you can be able to get all the life-enriching, life-empowering blog posts and comments and news articles and stories and positive reviews on different books. And
right.
It just goes on and on and on. But if you wanted to be able to go to a source that had all things positive, that could be able to help you with all things negative, inanewway.com really brings that home, because there isn't an outlet out there like what we can provide you with to be able to make you feel at home on the web.